Welcome players, I'm Adriana Rasmussen.
I will be playing Calliope.
And on behalf of the cast and crew, I would like to welcome you to SRJC's production of She Kills Monsters Virtual Realms. We are thrilled to bring you along on this adventure, but before we embark on our campaign, we must prepare you for battle. If you're not a Dungeons & Dragons nerd, don't worry, we'll teach you how to play. We'll also introduce you to the designers and artists who made this production possible. Are you ready? Let's get started.
Dungeons & Dragons as we know it today was published in 1974 and created by Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson. Its first incarnation, however, was a different game called Chainmail by Gygax and another guy named Jeff Perrin, which was published in 1971. This then fused into Arneson's Blackmoor campaign, which was based on Chainmail, which he then showed to Gygax. This led to Arneson and Gygax's partnership and the eventual creation of the game we know today. Heading into the 1980s, the game started becoming very popular, though this didn't come without its challenges.
Throughout these early days, confusion about the game ignited a flurry of societal panic. Concerned parents and evangelicals weren't shy with their contempt for the game, often pointing to its use of demonic art to cry devil worship and Satanism. Even disappearances and deaths were being wrongfully associated with D&D. These claims were wildly unfounded, but the increased attention they brought skyrocketed the game's reach and appeal. For all it was made out to be, D&D was mostly played by creative outcasts, people who were simply misunderstood or even bullied because they didn't fit in. The game's basis in imaginative, immersive storytelling gave players a safe and creative means of escape, and a sense of camaraderie and friendship amongst players, something they may have struggled to find at school or in daily life. Many communities have sprung up from these games. Conventions, tournaments, and cosplay are all commonplace, fueling an ever-growing culture. As Dungeons & Dragons the game goes, fans everywhere still play it, even today. With so many new ways to connect and play, you don't even have to be in the same room anymore, which has been pretty great for 2020. Many continue to use published D&D literature and modules to play. But these days, many creative dungeon masters are taking it upon themselves to create their own stories and adventures, using D&D as a general format. With reach and impact like this, it's safe to say Dungeons & Dragons has been foundational in influencing modern gaming and nerd culture.
The game was originally popular among men, and they were considered the primary fan base. This makes sense considering the creators were men, and it doesn't help that the way women were represented was very sexualized. Women in D&D were originally not well represented. In the first edition, female characters had a lower maximum strength than their male counterparts. For example, male halflings had a maximum strength of 17, while female halflings only had a maximum strength of 14. Recently, women have gotten a lot more representation with the popular Dungeons & Dragons web series Critical Role, in which prominent voice actors Ashley Johnson, Laura Bailey, and Marisha Ray play along and helps popularize the game as something for everyone, not just for men.
The Eye of the Beholder is a big floating orb with one giant eye on it, with some kind of tentacles coming out of the top with an eye at the end of each one. It first appeared in Dungeons & Dragons in 1974 and has continued to be a pretty common enemy into present day.
Next, we'll talk about the Paladins. Paladins are very powerful in their nature, and their goal is to find their holy quest. They are very rarely evil and focus more on being good.
Bards are known to be one of the weaker classes in Dungeons & Dragons. Most of their attacks will hit from far away, but that makes them pretty bad for hand-to-hand combat. Tiamat is one of the more common creatures that people fight when they play Dungeons & Dragons. The name is taken from a goddess in ancient Mesopotamian mythology, and she is the queen and mother of evil dragons and member of the main pantheon of Dungeons and Dragons gods.
Oh, well, hello, my dear viewer. It seems to me that you are a little lost, no? Well, allow me to be your guide in this wonderful world of how to play Dungeons and Dragons. The first thing you need is a group of like-minded friends. Next, and the second, arguably the most important thing about the whole game, is in fact the character sheet. Once you have the character sheet, this is where all of the information about your character goes. Your character's name, your character's race, your character's background and story, your character's abilities, your character's strengths and weaknesses. This is the catalyst of your character and everything it is. The third most important thing about Dungeons and Dragons is, in fact, the dice. You see, the dice is used for everything you do in Dungeons and Dragons, be it fighting, sleeping, talking, trying to get free beer from the bartender as a dwarf, anything at all. These dice are what you use to figure out if you succeed in getting that free beer from the bartender as a dwarf or not. If you roll a 1, then you will not get that beer. But my friend, if you roll a natural 20, my friend, you will get that beer and much, much more. You will get that beer and the sack of gold behind that bartender's counter and his wedding ring. Let's talk about the roles of the Dungeon Master and the role of the player. Ah, yes, the Dungeon Master. You see, the Dungeon Master is the one who rolls the attacks and everything the enemy does. Everything that the Dungeon Master does is to stop the players from making it to the end of the quest. Now, my dear viewers, we will talk about the role of the player. You see, the role of the player is to beat the Dungeon Master's quest. Everything that the Dungeon Master throws at the player must triumph over it, or else they will die. But the role of both the Dungeon Master and the player is to have fun and enjoy the time you have with your friends. That, my dear viewers, is how you play Dungeons and Dragons.
What's your process of coming up with the fight scenes, and what did you find challenging with this production since we're doing it through Zoom?
So some of the challenges are that we can't use some of the same rules apply, but not all of them. We have to really play to one audience member only, and that is our camera.
Yeah.
That camera right there. And we have the constraint of being within our box, learning what, and it's about practicing, right? But there are also opportunities of okay, what can we do to make things look really cool, or in this particular show, not just cool, but also humorous. Can we make something humorous, or and accept the constraints of the box and the camera.
Yeah, so whenever we do something fantasy, it's really easy to kind of just look at the fantasy genre and just go, oh, this is this. Like, you just slap wings on it and glitter, and then you can call it fantasy. And that's totally legit. But when it comes to specific things like D&D, which is important in a lot of people's lives and has created community for them and has led them to friends and careers and all that kind of stuff, and it is a rabbit hole where people know a lot of information and details, I wanted to try to pull little things from illustrations that are official in the D&D handbooks. I wanted to kind of do the best that I could with the resources we had in this year of COVID and Zoom theater, to just kind of like give a little bit of a nod to original designs and to information that races have and carry in like the D&D lore.
It is certainly not as I expected. You know, if you're creating something live in person, it's different because then you have all the textural elements that you can touch, you can actually feel, you can move around. So the challenges for this one was that you can't just change the lighting and change the whole mood. So in a way, you have to create a whole other image for it because it's on Zoom. And just kind of, because they do play the game. And when you play the game, I think it's all based on your imagination. So when you're seeing it on screen, you know, it's kind of having your imagination, you know, kind of turn into real images. And so being able to kind of lift this play out, you know, that would be really interesting.
So to start with, the all-important question, how familiar are you with World of D&D?
I would say that, I would venture to say I probably know D&D one of the most in the cast. I love D&D. I've been playing, I played back when I was a younger man, of course, but I think for the last 4 or 5 birthdays, I've spent all day playing D&D. I have a D&D podcast with some of my friends. I love it. I'm a big fan. Making a character and rolling dice and you know, seeing how things go is a big fun activity for me. So
can you describe what it's like being the production manager over Zoom?
It's hard, but we've overcome a lot of challenges. Communicating, getting things passed out, coordinating drop-offs and pickups. It's been tremendous to watch our company come together and make these great shows. The challenges that come with production managing over Zoom are welcome because at least we're getting to create something together.
Key was born in El Dorado, Arkansas. He was an actor and a fight director long before a playwright though. After hopping off the acting train, he moved to playwriting, but writing for roles he'd put himself in. He went on writing plays such as Viet Gone, Soul Samurai, The Inexplicable Redemption of Agent G, Krunk Fu Battle, and started writing for Marvel Studios in 2016 upon many other projects, as well as his first movie coming to theaters this March, Disney's Raise and the Last Dragon. Key strives to make his characters heroes, but who wouldn't usually be playing the hero. Key also emphasizes on diversity in the casts for the show he writes. For example, in this particular show, he hints to us that the characters are different races, but doesn't specifically say what races. Right when the pandemic hit, Key scrambled and turned the original She Kills Monsters play, made for the stage, and adapted it into this show, She Kills Monsters Virtual Realms. But he didn't write this rendition only because of the pandemic. He also wrote it for actors who are physically handicapped and may not be able to fully participate in our epic fight scenes. Key is also the artistic director of the Obie Award and Cafe Cinco Award winning Vampire Cowboys Theater Company in New York, where shows he writes are performed and where he also choreographs fights.